Hello and welcome to today's learning lunch at Tech Leaders Academy. We have a fantastic topic today. It's about personal branding and tech, and we have a phenomenal guest with us. But before we start with our topic and with our guest, I want to introduce you to Tech Leaders Academy. So, if you are working in tech, basically as a software engineer, somebody in data and analytics, as a team lead, as a tech lead, then Tech Leaders Academy offers you different offerings to grow personally, but also in your career. So, what we do is we do live streams as we do today. We do open spaces to discuss different topics with like minded people. We have a newsletter where we show you different career boosters, and we do also offer coachings and trainings. So, if you're interested in specialized coachings and trainings, check out tech-leaders.academy, and there you will find all our offerings. And now I will hand it over to Sarah to introduce our guest.
Yeah, hey, welcome to our first ever learning lunch. So, a new time that we are streaming at 12, at lunchtime. So, hope you all enjoy your lunch. Before I introduce the guest quite briefly, I would like to ask you, what do you expect from this session today? Because as you know, this is a live stream. You can definitely ask your questions, but you can also now have the chance to at your expectations. So what is the one key takeaway you want to take from this session? Just drop them in the chat, LinkedIn, YouTube, or on Twitch, and then we are happy to take that into our live stream. So coming to our guest, as I said, I want to make it quite briefly because he will also introduce himself. This is someone that I used to know already for quite some time. He I think he's a master in personal branding, even though he never thought of building a personal brand on a conscious way. So it just happened, as it's most of the time the case. It just happened. And he has a very interesting style to communicate. He's doing a lot of music and he's combining his passion for music and also for data in his content. And like now he has more than 14,000 followers already on LinkedIn. So if you are from the data space, you might know him. And also on YouTube, I think he has almost 700 subscribers, which is quite some numbers for someone who's doing that in the free time because he is working full time and he's also a dad. So I think it's something that it's a huge achievement to do that like next to a full-time job. So let's bring him on stage. Welcome, Tiankai Feng.
Hi everyone. Hi Sarah. Hi Sebastian. Nice to be
Hey,
here.
nice to have you.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Should we? I'm doing really well. I really liked your intro. I actually, on the side note, since you talked about me being a musician, the one
Mhm.
minute intro that the countdown thing that happens before was almost
Mhm.
like meditation for me. It was like so soothing, and the music was so soft that I was like, okay, now I'm calm. Now I'm ready to get into this. Very cool.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah. Cool stuff.
So
Should we just get started? What do you think?
yes, we
Sure.
want to get started. So
Hmm.
you prepared a wonderful slide deck for us, and
Hmm.
we decided that, of course, you will share some of your experiences, maybe also some strategies and methods. But
Hmm.
we will have a discussion on that. So we wanna don't want to make like a only like a teaching session. So we want to make come into a discussion together, and we of course, we invite everyone to participate in this discussion. So if you have anything to share, use the chance.
Hmm.
And then I can add the slide deck for you, Tiankai.
Perfect. Then let's get started. So I'm going to start with a very quick self-introduction as well, just on top of what Sarah already said, and then let's get into what we're going to talk about today. So I've been working in data analytics and data governance all my career so far. I'm very passionate about making music, Nintendo games, and silly humor. I think that's something that I've been using as my self-introduction for a while now. But thinking about more consciously playing into your personal brand, it's always good to know the other side of you as well, right? Like basically, who are you beyond your profession and what really drives you and what motivates you. As Sarah already said, I really like combining my musical passion and my music skills with my work as well. So I've been writing two rap songs about data. One is called the Digital Analytics Anthem, and one is called Governors of Data. And one of the lines I usually like to quote in the Digital Analytics Anthem is, if you just want numbers, the phone book has a website. I'm a proper analyst with actionable insights. And it's one of those lines that I really like to quote because it really represents the eternal struggle of data teams being taken seriously and being part of decision making, and not just as an afterthought or somebody that's just informed too late to report on something. And it should be much more than that. And part of why I realized that personal branding is actually working is that the personal brand can actually help you to become part of the decision making table and just to be taken more seriously by being perceived differently than maybe certain stereotypes. Right. Which leads me to the topic. Today, let's talk about what personal branding is and why we should do personal branding and how to do personal branding, and some tips and tricks just from my personal experience as well. It's interesting. I've been talking to Sarah and Sebastian yesterday as well about this. That actually, because I've been not doing this very consciously, and it just kind of happened, and people kept telling me how great I was doing personal branding, that I finally thought, why not talk about it? But I didn't have a clue about the more structured or the more, let's say, um, research based part of it all, which meant that for this particular talk, I was doing a little bit of research myself and just to combine it with my practical experience. And I'm very actually happy that it kind of matches and that I now actually feel even more confirmed that it's the right thing that I'm doing and that there's something out there that might other people might be happy to do so as well. Cool. So, personal branding. So, in a very nutshell, what is personal branding, right? Personal branding is really the intentional effort to differentiate your value and contribution beyond your reputation, which puts us in direct context and contrast to reputation. Because reputation is existent no matter what, right? Everybody has a reputation just by interacting with people and doing something in the world, even if you know them or not, these other people, and it really reflects how others see you. And they are based on opinions and beliefs that, because of your actions and what you did, basically exist, and they indicate credibility. But the thing about reputation is that no matter what you do, or no matter if you do something or not, it will exist in a certain way, right? And that means that stories will be told about you, and certain things will be mentioned about you that you might not know what they are, and they might not even represent who you think you actually are and what you represent. And the other side of it is personal branding, which means you do it more intentionally and more proactive. And it really indicates how you want others to see you. And it should align their perception with how you see yourself and who you want to be and what you stand for. And then it's really about being visible, but for the right things that you're intent to be seen for, right? In the end, of course, the goal is that personal branding will kind of influence your reputation and that it's much more aligned and that you are much more in control of the stories that being told about you and what's going on. In other ways, that's how I heard other experts also talk about it. It's really about what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? That is what is left of your personal brand and your reputation. And this is something that we should all take care of. And the reason why we should actually do it is that, really based on academic research, there's already proof that there's a relationship between personal branding and positive career outcomes, right? There's higher social capital, there's more financial rewards, there's more career opportunities coming up. And all of that means that personal branding and that human aspect to how you are as an employee or as a leader are having an impact on how you successful you are when you move forward, right? On the other hand, as well, if you are not as communicative and you are not the most extrovert person, for example, then without the personal branding part of yourself and making an effort, people might not know a lot about you, right? And people might have not enough interactions to basically make a certain image of you, which means that people might be perceived as bland and uninteresting due to this lack of visibility, right? That maybe a lot of people just commonly agree, I don't really know a lot about this person, seems boring, right? And Again, we have to really be conscious that this is about what people say when you're not in the room, right? And people
Mhm.
will not say this to your face, but you would notice that just people not consider you have any strengths or any weaknesses because they just don't know a lot about you. And that is part of not doing any branding, but also not having any really specific reputation besides being not really known to anything.
Mhm.
And I think additionally, if you don't do personal branding, right, then others will brand you for on your behalf, and which means the reputation part is taking over completely without the counterpart of personal branding. And then you might not be in control of what the story is that is being told about you. And it's never great, right? If you are being basically communicated completely differently than in the way you perceive yourself. So the only way to really counteract that is to be more proactive in communicating yourself and who you are.
I have a question right now.
Yes, please.
So, Tiankai, do you also made the experience that you had a certain reputation from outside
Mhm.
that you didn't know in the first place, and maybe also on top that wasn't matching with the reality? So, something that was in the room about you that wasn't true.
Yes, I mean, I think we're going into that part also a little bit later, but
Hmm.
reputation is a mix of things that you did, but also of how you just look like or how you are perceived on the surface as well, right? And I think just me particularly, I would say that because I'm actually born and raised in Germany, but my parents are from China, right? That these type of Asian stereotypes in like a really international workplace are coming with it, right? If I would have not communicated me myself as a more creative person or a more vocal person about things, then I would probably, in many cases, be assumed as a hardworking, just listening to orders type of person, which unfortunately still happens in the world, right? And so in that case, reputation really becomes almost a mix with stereotyping and other kind of prejudices that you have. But also, people make associations that you might not like, right? So, only saying, for example, that I would be good in data analysis doesn't mean that I'm bad at communicating it, right? So, like
Hmm.
this instance, I'm thinking that people who are good with Excel are not good in PowerPoint, for example, is not really valid anymore. True, right? So, it's a lot about this as well that being seen strong in something might make people associate that you're weak in something else, and that is something to counteract as well. So yeah, I mean, those are just a few examples of where I consciously saw my reputation having certain optimization improvements, I would say, and how I was trying to counteract it as well.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Cool.
cool. All right. So, just in terms of great segue, Sarah, by the way. So, representation, right? And there was this really good TED talk that I saw about how representation is really not always a choice. And the way you are born into this world and who you are and what your ethnicity is something that you never chose, right? But they are part of you. So, basically, there's things that you present no matter what, and there are things that you present by choice, right? So, what you present, no matter what, is really the demographics, right? Who you look like, people might see a certain ethnicity in yourself, or they know where you're born, or they know you have kids or not, and that all plays into what you present or not. Also, your heritage experience, of course, play a role in it, and where you were employed before, and what kind of culture or context you're in. Also, company culture-wise, based on your previous employments, people might think you present a certain way, right? Let's say you only worked in startups before, and now everybody thinks you can only work in startups because you would not fit into a corporate culture. Those are just, let's say, some of these representation points that we're trying to make here. And of course, there's much more elements. But you also have representation by choice elements where you can every day make a choice about what you want to represent, right? What character you have, what tonality you use in your communication, what expertise you want to kind of point to that you have or really proud of, how you lead people, for example, what values you have, what opinions you have on certain topics. Every day you have a choice there on what you want to represent. But the real key here is that you do have all that, I would not call it baggage, but there's all of that elements that are behind you that you cannot really get rid of. And you have a choice over other things. Now it's really the key to make sure those two things fit, right? And that might sometimes means that you break stereotypes, but maybe sometimes that also means that you play into it and that you know certain people always see you in a certain way, and you build on it for the element of success, right? And the element of impact that you finally have, and to basically balance it out. Just for example, right? And I talked about it already. Like if I'm facing Asian stereotypes, or I'm facing even as a parent right now, right? That I might be less available, and that might mean that I'm less hardworking than others. Then I might need to double emphasize on how time management is important, how being a parent gives me responsibility, that there's more out there than just my job, and all these kind of things, and turn it around into a positive aspect, and to rather give hopefully the right inspiration impulse for others to balance their lives in the right way, instead of being sucked into that I need to work harder and take a burnout and have less time for my kids, and try to basically take the high road. But I think this is really hopefully representing a lot of the daily struggles that we all have, as in that you come with certain things that you are by default being seen for, and you still try to break out of it and seen as a unique person that you are, and that of course you have all the rights of being, and how you present yourself as well. Yeah. Cool. Which leads me to a little bit of the how, right? So, how to actually do personal branding. And this is now just taken in a very simplified way, a little bit adapted from a Harvard Business Review article. Actually, also shout out to Harvard Business Review having a great podcast as well that is picking a lot on different leadership topics. One of them is about personal branding, and they actually got a dating expert to come in to talk about the parallels between finding your perfect partner and how you brand yourself and how you present yourself, and not having a lot of time to make a first impression, right? And all of that is very fascinating. So go give it a listen if you're really interested. But basically, if you want to do it in a structured way, right, start with yourself. And I think it's really fascinating because in the world of data, but also in the world of marketing, you talk a lot about design thinking, which I will go into later. And design thinking always as a method starts from understanding and empathizing the audience, right? And in the personal branding side, though, instead of saying though what drives others, you start with the what drives you, because in the end it's about being authentic as well. So instead of saying what do the people want, so I'm gonna be what the people want, it's more about who am I and how can I be successful for them, because everything else would be inauthentic, right? Like let's say people really want somebody who is into extreme sports and only plays heavy metal music. That's just not me, right? I will not start tomorrow all of a sudden communicating about it. But that is basically where it goes. So when you think about what drives you, it's about your own motivations, your skills, your passions, how what impact you want to have in the world, and who your role models are. And think about that more as in reflecting on yourself, on who you want to be and who you are, and what really makes you happy in your life, and then basically act accordingly, right? Which means afterwards, it's about aligning your values. You define basically in what kind of audience in front of yourself you want to be with, right? Aligning your values means you want to align your values with the context of values that you're confronted with. That could be either a certain platform, that could be either your own organization and your company, right? But how do your values fit to the values of the basically bigger context of things that you want to do personal branding in? So it's about your role in it, it's about the values you have, it's about mapping your strength and focus to the organizational goals and what is basically being seen as successful in that goal. So after that, it's about the human part, right? So you now have basically yourself, you have like the bigger context around things and the environment you're in. And now it's about picking the right people and your key audience or key stakeholders within that environment. So like who is your target audience? Who would be actually who is for who it's important in your point of view to have the right perception of you, right? And that could mean that, for example, leaders, right? Like that's usually how it works. You have to be visible and show your value in front of the higher leaders in the organization. But sometimes it's also decision makers. Sometimes they don't have to be very senior people, but they have a lot of decision power because of the influence and network they have, and because they have always good points to make. So those could be key stakeholders as well. And that leads to also influencers and thought leaders, which is much more of a topic, for example, for social media, like on LinkedIn. If you have the right interaction and the right perception of those thought leaders and influencers, for example, to really do the right interaction with them. And by knowing who they are and how they tick, you might be able to learn a little from them, but also on how to engage with them in the right way. Which means, lastly, really acting on it, right? So you made all that planning work now about what drives you, what are the values, who are your stakeholders. Now take action. So that means basically communicate yourself, build connections, be relatable, memorable, I always say, because in the end, it's about people understanding why you are the way you are and getting inspired and taking something away from it, but also memorizing your advice and what you're communicating and knowing that you are standing for it, right? It's also important to have meaningful interactions though, right? So it's not all about, maybe contrary to what other people think about personal branding, it's not only about you advertising yourself in one direction the whole time. It's a lot about having those interactions in both directions too, by being empathetic and listening actively in any interactions you have. That could be either in one-on-ones and really, for example, just understanding the other side and thereby being really helpful and valuable to the other person as well, but could also be just asking openly for like votings or comments in your posts, for example, and getting a little bit more of the interactive activity in as well. And very importantly, communicate intentionally, right? And although things can be random and we all want to be creative, don't make sure that it's not just communicating for the sake of communicating, right? There has to be something in there. Either it's the element of surprise, it's an element of entertainment, maybe it's the element of teaching something, but there has to be at least one point of something that's in it for your audience and not just in it for yourself, that you can basically check the box, I posted something today, for example, but really do something that is valuable. And hopefully that leads you to have a more structured approach, right? I feel like many people starting with the last step, right? So they just start posting and communicating, and then wonder why nothing is happening and why it's not working. But if you make a little bit of the preparation steps that are coming up front, then it's just a bit more of an intended and conscious way of branding yourself in the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for people to find out their motivations? So what drives them, or
Mhm.
where they have specific strength? Because like from our experience in the tech career coaching, for example, where we are also
Yeah.
facing similar questions, yeah, we find out that many people, they have never thought about that before, and they it's really hard for them to come up with something that is very specific for them. So what are your tips for people to find that out?
I mean, it's maybe sounds very cheesy now, but there are all these personality tests out there already, right? And I'm
Mm.
not saying they're answering all your questions, but at least they give you a direction to look further into, right? I mean, I'm aware of these four-letter tests, of course, right? Of where you get clustered into a certain character type. There's also what I'm aware of, like a high five test, for example, where the five main strengths of yourself after answering a survey come out, and you might to get into it. But all of that could lead you to think a little bit deeper into it, right? And
Mhm.
it's less about what your strengths are, but why those are your strengths and what really fulfills you in doing this, to then help understand where you're good at. To be fair, right? I think people try to be unique too quickly, um, because in the end, a lot of these are just guidelines and guardrails for you to find your way first, right? And how you actually implement it and how you actually communicate is still completely up to you. And most of the cases, anyway, very unique because you are doing your own thing and you will always choose your way of how you actually communicate it afterwards.
Yeah, we got a
Hmm.
nice add-on to that
Hmm.
from Midi. Hi, Midi. Nice to
Hi,
meet you
good to
here.
see you.
I would say you could actually ask by making yourself visible and figure out among the way what drives you.
Hmm.
Sometimes people are blocked by analysis, parallelists, and they eventually don't make the first jump to do anything online.
That's also true. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good point. I think, I mean, in that way, right? You can, what really drives you in finding your way doesn't have to be completely on your own, right? And I really like Medi's point here that you can also understand already among the people that do know you and that you have close relationships with, of who they think you are and how they perceive you, and maybe that gives you already enough impulses to then find your direction where to go to. So you don't have to do it on your own, right? Like get all the help that you need and that you want, and that might help you find your way. And yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I have another question to you, Tiankai. So
Mhm.
now you have this four-step way how to start with your personal brand. But you also said in the beginning, or we also talked about that you didn't had this like straight approach. So how did you do it by yourself? Did you start it with this approach, or did you came up with this afterwards?
I mean, so again, right? This is where my non-intentional way of doing it. I was lucky that I found out later on now, for preparing for this, that it kind of fit. But what I did know that being a musician really was driving me a lot, right? And I knew that me being a musician meant I liked the songwriting part of it all. I liked the showing other people what I did part of it all as well, and I liked the translating serious things into more of an entertainment things in a more emotional way, and that I was really conscious about. So when I started writing, for example, these rap songs about data, of course that also meant I knew what I was doing in trying to make data governance, for example, or data analytics a bit more approachable for people who are maybe not as familiar with it, right? And that was the whole point of it. So in that case, I already knew what my value was. So value as in wanting to make data more approachable. The value of my organization was to have a better data culture, for example. I knew the stakeholders would be the people that are not as close working with data, and I wanted to convince them, for example. And then I made myself visible for sure through that music part of it all, right? But I wasn't as conscious about it in my head, very simply put. I just knew that it felt like the right thing. And now using this framework, I kind of know that I did choose the right things. But and my intuitive things don't come as easily to everyone, right? So
Yeah.
I think just having a bit more of that guidance and maybe a bit more of a calling it out approach might help um, for, for
Yeah.
for me and for others as well.
And maybe to conclude, before you never start doing it or try it out, better try it out without
Yeah,
having any strategy prepared,
yeah,
but try it out first. And when you have the feeling there is something, it gives you some value, and you want to continue. You make it even more professional. Now you want to consciously build your personal brand. I think then you should start at least. Or latest, then you should start to make your mind about what drives you and what kind of value do you want to transport in your communication.
absolutely. I also think that I really liked actually what Midi said as the term analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
It because it becomes that excuse to not do anything, right? Like I
Yes.
haven't analyzed everything yet, so I'm gonna wait until I've analyzed
Yes.
it. But you will never, especially with people things, you will never fully know how it works, right?
Yeah.
Because people are irrational and random most of the time anyway, still. So you will never fully know what's gonna work, what's not gonna work. So instead of like overthinking it, I try to find the right balance. Like be a bit more intentional, but don't overthink it, and then just start doing it, and you will find your way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
cool.
So just to highlight that one as well, I met Tiankai through through his great songs on LinkedIn during the
Hi, Shannon.
pandemic. They were a great way to learn about new topics and also have a laugh during a stressful time. Thank you for sharing that,
Yeah.
Shannon.
Thanks so much, Shannon. Cool. Good. I'm gonna jump a little bit into of
Yes.
a just link to traditional marketing. Let's call it. I mean, there's nothing traditional about it anymore because now we talk about digital marketing and social media marketing as well, which is all the hype right now as well. But because personal branding is another way of branding, and branding does come from traditional marketing and advertising, right? Which is a lot of the methods how you can actually analyze yourself, or a little bit find a way of how to do it can come and can be borrowed from the traditional marketing approaches of marketing products and services. That means, for example, to apply design thinking, right? Like, and that is more about empathizing with your audience, defining basically what they want and what they really want to see. You ideate and you start prototyping different things, right? The whole topic we just talked about, just post something, communicate something, see if it works. If it doesn't work, change something again, and then start communicating as long and just continue the journey and iteratively build on what works, what doesn't work. SWOT analysis, the classic, like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Right. So basically, look into what your strengths and weaknesses are, but looking from an internal and external point of view about it too. Right. And that is a little bit more thinking about how you can be more unique. Right. I wouldn't call other personal branding people as competitors necessarily, but more about that you still want to be different than them. And so Imitating them or doing exactly the same as them will never work, right? Because they did it first. So it's still important to find your own way. And by analyzing this, you might find a spot where nobody is tackling it yet, maybe a certain topic with a certain attitude or using a certain format. That is something that you might be able to go into. Porter's Five Forces, which is much more about entering a market, right? That can be especially interesting if you join a new company or you join a new social media platform or you really start going into a new area of expertise to think about the forces, right? From they call it buyer's power, supplier's power, substitution power, new entry power, and these kind of things, and analyzing how difficult it is to be there. And by basically understanding the elements that you have there, you might be able to think about it differently and how to counteract them and anticipate maybe certain challenges on the way as well. And lastly, brand positioning, of course, that's much more about how certain brand values are there, right? The classic way of be would be to say what are the three adjectives that would describe your personal brand, right? Is it creative? Is it entertaining? Or is it approachable? Is it empathetic? Whatever you think are the top three, for example, adjectives that would describe you. How do others position in it in the space that you're in? And is that the right way of how you should do it, or should you differentiate yourself a little bit better? As you can see, there's a lot of methods, and those are only just a few that exist already. But basically, you don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to personal branding if there's so many methods out there from traditional marketing and branding that you can just reuse and apply it to you as a person and to your audience as well. Cool. This having said, there's a few guidelines. This is actually from a Forbes article that I really think makes a lot of sense. Those are just 10 guidelines to succeed in personal branding. But to be honest, they're much more just impulsive statements and like guiding statements rather than giving you practical advice on how you should actually create your content or how you should actually communicate. But I think it still works, right? So having a focus, for example, right? Like you cannot really represent everything and have an opinion to every little thing because then that's not credible anymore, right? Like you cannot be an expert in every single topic. Rather have a focus and be good in something. And also that's only fair to the quality of the what you will communicate and the quality of the content in the end. Be genuine means that you should really talk about things that you are really knowledgeable of or that you feel like there's something you can valuably basically contribute to, because everything else would seem very inauthentic and not seem genuine. And audiences are not stupid, right? They will see that this seems like very off for you as a person, and why should I listen to you giving an opinion on this one, basically, as an example? And that should really be there. Telling a story is also important. People really love narratives in any way, as it's a visual way of doing it, or it's in a basically you writing a text, maybe it's writing a song, as I do. But telling stories usually just makes things easier, accessible, more memorable than just spitting facts and like 3 bullet points, for example. And think about how you can spin things that you want to communicate more into a story, and then bring people along the story with like a beginning and a middle and an end, and like really have that feeling of closure as well afterwards. Consistent is a little bit and parallel to having a focus, right? Like consistent not only in the content that you're communicating, but also in the frequency and in the way you communicate, and not basically making too many changes, because jumping around too much, again, it might be a little bit difficult for your audience to catch up on. Be ready to fail, a very important point. Again, when you are trying new things, it's always probably easy to um, for things to not work. But that is very normal. Like before you have a success, many people and all of the famous leaders in the world can tell you that they had to fail 9 times before they had one success, right? That is just part of it. As long as there's no like severe consequence of it, of like a life and death situation or anything happening as consequence of your failure, it's
Mm.
completely normal to try out things and things don't work. But just learn from it, move on, and just continue, try to make it work, right? Creating a positive impact, right? People really don't like negativity, I would say, in a very literal way, but it's also about trying to have create value rather than devaluing others, which is very important. So don't step on others, for example, to lift yourself up. Really lift yourself up and bring other people along. That should be more of the guidance here. You can follow successful examples, but as I mentioned, don't imitate them and copy them. It's more about learning what the elements of success were and trying to apply them in an adaptive way for yourself. Living your brand means that you are beyond your job, also basically living your brand. Let's say, for example, that besides your data job, um, that if you want to be the creative person in the data job, then beyond your data job, you might be an artist that is drawing pictures or that is writing poems, for example, as well. And that is part of yourself. And that might be helping actually with your personal brand as well to share a little bit of your personal life in a certain way as well to live your brand authentically. Let others tell your story. That is really almost being grateful and giving others credit for sharing your story and being advocates of you. And always be grateful of those that want to tell the story that you want to tell and being there to amplify it. For example, me being able to talk to you and you giving me the platform now is a great thing. So that is me also being grateful for you telling my story a little bit as well, and then leaving a legacy, right? That is like almost the ultimate human goal, that everybody wants to have an impact on the world and leave something. And part of it is, of course, also how you are making people feel and how make people perceive you as well.
Wow, that's a lot.
I know, I know. I
There are
think
many rules to follow.
I know, but they, as I said, I don't wouldn't call them actually rules. That is just the name that actually the article said. Maybe it's more about guiding points on how you can be more successful, and if you just look at them once in a while before you create something, it might help you to be just more conscious about what you're doing as well. Yeah.
That's for sure. So, Tiankai, how do you keep yourself motivated to post on a regular basis? Because for me, for example, that's the most difficult part. So, to be consistent in frequency, but also in the topics. Oh, I think that's also something that others are struggling a lot with.
It's a very good question. Um, to be fair, and that might sound a little bit off now, but I never had to motivate myself because I'm such an eager communicator. I don't know how to say it in a different way, but I love posting. Like, it's just for me, I really love to that even the whole process of just coming up with something, like really enjoying the joke that I maybe had in my head and how to package it in the right way, turning into a meme maybe even, and then writing the right context to the post and then letting other people see it, as like this whole creative process from conception to posting and putting it out there just really is fun for me. There's just a lot of fun stuff out there that is for me really the eager part of it. I would say that I'm not enforcing it either, all right? But I'm really not in the mood to post. I do have breaks as well, right? And I just don't, you don't have to post if you don't want to post. You really should not force it. But in a certain way, it almost becomes a habit and a mindset at some point, right? That there's certain things that you have thoughts about, that you might have come up with a great experience that relates you to a certain topic at work, or that something really inspired you and you want to share that inspiration with others. That is how basically I find content that I can always post about. And yeah, as long as it works and people enjoy it, I just continue, right? And again, if I feel like something is not working at all, then I don't do it again, but that's also completely fine. Yeah.
Yeah. We we got a great question from the
Mhm.
audience from Monica, and she's asking, what are other ways to build a personal brand apart from posting on social media like LinkedIn, YouTube, etc.?
Yeah. Hi, Monica. Good to see you here. Yeah, I would say so because those social media is like the classic, traditional, almost classic way now of doing personal branding, right? But as I mentioned before, I think a lot of personal branding can be really powerful through one-on-one interactions. That can be either with people that you know already and that you really want to get inspired about, but you really want to get feedback about your personal branding, for example, and see how you can improve. But also, you can practice your personal branding with every stranger interaction that you have as well, like coffee chats with colleagues you've never met before, people in the industry that you want to meet up, maybe on conferences as well. But every one of those interactions is a chance for you to practice your personal brand, but also to see if you're leaving the right impact there. Plus, you can learn from the other person's personal branding approaches and what they like to talk about to see how that improves you. And I always say, because posting on social media is not for everyone, right? You have to have a certain attitude and a certain, yeah, passion for it to do it. but you don't have to do on social media. A lot of it comes maybe from like other interactions, more on and more intimate and like smaller groups, the way you can also do it. And word of mouth can be really powerful, as in the more you do it, the word is going to spread anyway, and that way the personal brand is also going to spread. But then it's more important to busy manage your time and pick and write the valuable interactions you want to have, and the ones that fulfill you, where you can actually create your personal brand in these environments.
Yeah, great.
Hmm.
Thanks, Monica. Hope we could answer your question. If you also have ideas, just share it with us. Would be interested if you see even more possibilities to create a personal brand.
Absolutely.
And now, Tiankai, how many slides are we
Yeah.
have we still left? Because I have more questions on that one, and I'm now
Exactly. How much
wondering.
time do we have left right now?
Around 15 minutes.
Okay, then let me jump through a few, right? And we're going to be
Okay.
very quickly. So basically, this is just a very practical advice that people might be able to think of. So basically, having a communication toolbox where you can create a communication plan, right? If you're really one of these are like a more practice, a more structured approach, you can basically find that communication toolbox with what topics you want to talk about, who you want to talk to, where you do it on what platforms and touch points, when you want to do it, and what content you want to do. And like in any way you want to manage your content and your posting behavior or your communication behavior with others as well, you can have a more structured approach to plan ahead and thereby increase that consistency and that frequency maybe a little bit. But again, right, this is not for everyone. I'm not forcing like a super structured table approach. On everyone, but if you're that is something that helps you, you can think about it and just adapt it for your own purpose on what you want to do. Cool. Maybe more practicing this for LinkedIn, because I know most of the audience is probably coming from LinkedIn anyway right now, and this might be not complete news to everyone. I'm just going to go very quickly through this, but a very basic thing is to have a complete LinkedIn profile, right? And a complete no-go, unfortunately, is to not have a profile picture, for example, because that makes you just like completely feeling like you're hiding something, and then it creates even a barrier instead of just getting to know you, for example. But it's more about it, right? It's making a good first impression, which means that whatever is seen on a profile in the sequence, you're showing the modules of your experience and who you are and who endorsed you and what content you want to showcase. It can be more intentional, right? So think about your personal brand, and then you can adapt your LinkedIn profile accordingly. The positioning statement, which is both sides. One is internally for yourself. Who do you want to be, and how would you describe yourself and your personal brand? And then basically, how can you adapt it externally as well to use it for your CV, maybe even, or maybe for the summary part of your LinkedIn profile as well to be there. But that statement could be also your description behind your name, for example, right? To basically make sure that you are known for something and it's very intentional. Then it's about the unique point of view, right? Again, like don't just follow everyone to talk about the same topics and post about the same topics. At least try to have a unique point of view on it and twist it into something that makes it completely 100% you. And this is what really can work, because then you are the differentiator. It's also about being findable, right? SEO, SEM friendly makes a lot of sense. Just like on website marketing, that you would do it for your own LinkedIn profile, for example, to use the right keywords. So also you're findable for the right things. And again, consistent posting schedule. We just talked about it already. I see Mehdi also already having a point of view on this as well. I know this one is hard, but because people do enjoy consistency and so do machines, we're very similar like that, right? But having a more stable presence with a stable element of topics that you're covering might really help for you to be just top of mind for people.
Yeah. So everybody can see Mehdi's message or his comment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think consistency is like our top topic today.
Yeah.
And it's nice to hear that from Mehdi. For everybody who doesn't know, Mehdi, he's a developer advocate. So marketing and personal branding is like one of his core topics in his job.
Yeah, and Mehdi, sorry, is also a big account on LinkedIn and YouTube. So
Absolutely.
if you want to have more, or if you need one more to follow, you should definitely check out his profile, because he
Absolutely.
is also having these fun elements in his posts, and he is more focusing on data engineering and He's also going to conferences and interviews a lot of people there.
Exactly.
So
He's
it's
doing a lot
quite
of useful
interesting.
interviews with people there. I really love
Yeah.
those interviews. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, maybe I'm really curious about your hat collection now, your cap collection. So maybe we can have a separate conversation about this afterwards. Cool. All right. Just one last thing from my side. So just a few things that I learned on the way while reflecting on my journey, right? So first of all, again, very simply put, marketing yourself does sound awkward, but everybody can find their own way, right? And again, what makes me, I think, a little bit different as well is that I never really had a commercial reason behind all my branding. I just really did it for the fun of it. So thinking about that, I never tried to sell anything. So it also hopefully never came off as like bragging too much. It was much more about I just wanted to spread some joy and fun and some knowledge on the way as well, right? And so knowing who you are and what you want to communicate and what your goal is, you can find your own way as well. And it doesn't have to be so awkward if you do it in the way that you feel comfortable. Again, one other thing, never say no to coffee chats and meetups. That's one thing that I really enjoyed on the journey, that I had the chance to meet so many new people. And every new interaction and every new acquaintance or friendship I made on the way really was inspiring for me, like in all different directions. Either inspired me to be a better parent, maybe, or to be a better musician, but also, of course, for work stuff, just to know about other areas and how they interact with data or how other data areas are working, but how other companies are working with data helped me a lot to get inspired. And again, practice not only my branding, but also how I improve on my day-to-day job as well. Again, how I talk about my work as part of my branding. I really practice elevator pitching what data governance is. And that was just part of it because nobody understood what it was, for example. So I had to be really directly there and adapt it also for different non-experts to get the relatability going on there. Guiding conversations on and offline to your strength is also important. I feel like sometimes you have strength and have opinions that are really valuable for conversations that you are not part of or that people don't think of asking you. So it's more about if there is a natural way of getting into the conversation, a team meeting, for example, or like in a informal group lunch, for example, then don't shy away from it, right? You can talk about how you think about it and why you have a certain point of view, and maybe that already helps people to perceive you differently and seeing strength in you that they didn't see before. Try unconventional things, right? Creativity creates uniqueness. I think, again, I did fail a lot as well, and I know not everything works, but I'm really glad that I tried everything out, right? I'm really glad that I had new ideas and I always tried them and never stopped myself from doing it. Of course, as long as it's not offensive or not hurting anyone, what's the worst that can happen? Would be my question, right? The only thing is that maybe not a lot of people see it or they think it's weird, but then you just move on and do something else. At least you tried something new. And lastly, that's related to it. Not everything will work, but that's completely fine. The real key here is having the right mindset and to accept failures, learn from them, recognize achievements as well, and then move on and continue.
Great.
Cool.
Thank
Cool.
you.
I wanted to move into the video of it all. I don't know if we can still do that. What do you think?
Yes, we still have
Of
time.
course.
Yeah. Since we talked a lot about my music part, how I bring it into my work and data, and how I try to be more fun as well, right? We wanted just to play a short 2 to 3 minute video of one of my recent music videos as well.
Should I try to put it on?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And just to give you an idea of how
Let's.
my
This is.
Do you want to build a dashboard? I'm so tired of Excel files. Literacy, literacy. Once you know better about all the data, let's collaborate. Data flowing drip, 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 and then it stops. Oh, API is broken, no one's helping out. Oh, oh, oh. You've got a bug in there. You've got a bug in there. When the code just doesn't work and you look and you can't figure out. ChatGPT is happy to help. Oh, you've got a bug in there. We don't talk about Excel, no, no, no. We don't talk about Excel. In Python or in R. In Python or in R. We're which language is better to use? It depends. This could be the start of governance, so we can improve the data quality, yeah. Someday AI will come and will replace all our jobs. Look in the data catalog, it might have what you're looking for. If we all document things, it'd be great. I love SQL, I love SQL. Select what I need from all the tables. It's part of basic data skills. We all should know SQL, SQL.
Oh, that was cool. I
Amazing.
hope the sound was transported to the
Absolutely.
different
Yeah.
mediums.
Crystal
We
clear.
don't know.
All good. Cool.
Cool. So, do you have all the songs or also available individually? So, because I'm interested most of all in these Python and R comparison.
No, I actually just made like these headlines of songs almost, right? That was a lot of fun for sure. Yeah.
Ah, look here.
Yeah.
The comment. Thank for your beautiful music. You made my day.
Great.
Definitely.
I'm glad it did. Oh, there's one more question before that,
Yeah,
right?
there's one more question
Ola. Yeah.
from Alexandra. Hola. Hi.
Mhm.
Clearly, this was a process to build your personal and genuine brand. Could you share the most hilarious situation you faced in your personal branding journey?
Hilarious. I would say the most often comment and question I get is, can you write a song about it? That is probably, I'm still getting that every second day, probably. Like random LinkedIn messages with topics, if I can write a song about it. Which, on the one hand, is great, right? Because it really establishes me a songwriter that is flexible and that can write about anything. But on the other hand, right, I cannot. It's also about the artistic integrity, almost, right? I cannot write a song about every single thing. Then it's not fun anymore to do so. I think, yeah, I mean, that is one of the fun side effects, I would say, of doing this, right? That I'm just known as the songwriter that can do stuff with different topics and making it more fun. So yeah, that's a cool example, hopefully. Yeah.
Nice. So now I also have another question, maybe also for the not a hilarious part, but maybe also sometimes for a more harder part.
Yeah.
So have you ever received like a hate comment in like for your postings on LinkedIn or maybe also on YouTube? And
Mhm.
if yes, how did you handle that? Because I think that's also something that many
Yeah.
people fear of. So how to
Yeah.
handle how to handle criticism in a public way?
Yeah. I have to say I was maybe lucky so far that I never got direct criticism or direct hate comments. But two reasons there, right? One is that LinkedIn is still a professional network, and
Mhm,
people are there with their real names and their employers. So if they
mhm,
are really hateful or doing something really offensive, it's them in the end that are gonna hurt because of it, and not me. And people are still very careful about that. And the other side of YouTube is I just don't have that much reach still, right? So it's just
mhm.
more of those people that actually watch it and share it are still very much in the data community or like enjoy the fun of it. So there's not that much hate comments coming. But I am aware though that other people will tell me how other people might perceive me in a certain way. And I think the most often um, I hear like hearsay I get about me is that if I'm only writing music videos every day, I'm not doing anything work related every day or what's going on, or if I'm not too serious enough about my job or something.
Mhm.
These kind of comments I do get, but it's something where I do realize you cannot make everyone happy, right? If you're doing something unique and creatively, then there's always going to be people that don't like it because it's very subjective. And like haters gonna hate, right? Basically, as the rappers always say.
Yes.
As long as it's not hurting me completely and I'm not gonna fall off like completely there, and as long as there's people that enjoy what I'm doing and that I can be part of a community that is finding the fun in all of it, that's all fine with me. But it's a very good point. Like you have to also anticipate after a certain period that not everybody will like it, and if it comes to a year, don't let it get you down too much, for sure.
Yeah. And talking about fears, I have another question. So, I feel like there are many people anxious about telling too much about their job or sharing like insights that they have in their daily work life. So, what would be your advice for them to start with personal branding, or maybe you experience something yourself and you can give like a first-hand experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think connected to sharing from your own job is even the whole just a confidentiality thing, right? I mean, in many companies, you're not even allowed to talk about the details of your job, right? I think, very simply put, one of the ways of doing it is generalizing what you experience and what you want to share about, right? It doesn't have to say that it comes from your own experience from yesterday at what time of the day, but it can also just be certain people face certain issues, and this is how I would basically face it, right? The other way is if you can phrase it into something valuable for your audience, um, not just sharing basically your personal experience, but what you learn from it and how you advise others to deal with that situation is always more powerful anyway. And then you can move away from the specifics of the issue itself, but guide it more into how you would handle it and how others might get inspired by your point of view and your actions that you took because of it as well. Um, and lastly, it doesn't really have to be sharing too much about your own job anyway, right? It can be just observations and things that you picked up in conversation as well, and that you just package it in an anonymous or like generalized way, and you can still talk about it. I mean, it's really completely up to you what you want to talk about. It doesn't have to be your personal experience completely. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good. So should we sum it up here? So maybe we can make a round robin and maybe make a short summary or what we take away from this session. If you like, Sebastian, do you want to, or should I start? I don't know if
I
I
can
come up.
start. That's no problem.
Okay.
So I think we talked several times about this consistency topic, and it's also my topic, my personal topic, because I think there's creativity, there's a lot of passion for sharing knowledge, but it's really hard to be consistent. And maybe I should work a little bit on this four-step phase that Tiankai showed in order to find the right spot for me, because if I find like the right recipe for me what to talk about, maybe I get this passion for it or this passion boost that he's talking about, because we now know he doesn't need to motivate himself, it just comes out. So I hope that I come to this point. That would be great, so I can have more consistency in my postings.
Yeah, true.
Cool.
Then I will continue, and I will also want to share this question. Sorry for that. It's kind of interrupting, but it's our first question that we are receiving from Twitch. That's why
Oh,
we need
okay.
to show it.
We are on Twitch? No.
Yeah, we are on Twitch. We don't have followers yet. So
Okay.
if you are on Twitch, you can follow us. Of course, it's
Okay.
just we are experimenting with different mediums. And
Got
yeah,
it.
that's why I want to highlight that. So, how does one upscale from a position? I'm not 100% sure if I understand it correctly, but maybe Tiankai, you understand it.
There's a follow-up there as well now
There's
on
a follow up.
transition.
I
I
want,
want to be more visible in my position. How can I do that?
yeah. How
Yeah.
can I do that?
hmm I know we're running out of time, but maybe very
Yeah.
simply put, there's being visible in front of the general audience of and the public of your organization, but it's much more important to be visible to the right people in your organization too. So everyone that maybe has an influence on your career progression, either directly or indirectly, maybe map yourself a little bit where they are and who they are, and think about what interests them, right? And maybe you can find the commonalities between what you want to talk about, what you're working on as well, and what they care about. And you can basically have conversations with them and communicate in a more structured and a visible way to those people that actually make the decisions about your career. And this might help you at least as a first step. And then hopefully with the right, people and the right decision makers, it continues. Cool.
Cool. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. So then I will sum it up my thoughts on that. So I came up with the idea that personal branding is also helping you in become a better communicator in general, because you are starting to reflect on your observations, for example, but you also start to structure your thoughts in a more thorough way. So of course it can help you to boost your career in specific ways, but at least it also makes you a better communicator, and that's something that I take away. And now, Tiankai, what is your
Sure.
takeaway?
I think I realized that personal branding is not a one size fits all approach, right? Like, it's not like if everybody follows exactly those steps and rules, then you're going to be successful. We all still have to find a way because it's a very human centric thing to do. And we all have probably different challenges with it all. Like, either we have fears or something, or we have anxieties about certain things, and we might have harder times to be disciplined about consistency, right? As well. But if we're all a bit more reflected on where our struggles are, then we can maybe counteract them a little bit better. But it's then up to you to find the right motivation and the antidote, basically, to do so. And yeah, I hope that everybody could learn a little bit today or get at least inspired by what we talked about today.
I think so. I'm pretty sure. And with that, I would like to do the closing announcement,
Mhm.
basically. So because Tiankai and Sarah and I we teamed up, and we want to offer a special course about personal branding in tech because we think tech needs more content creators, needs more people who influence, more people that share their knowledge, and in order to do so and to develop yourself to become a strong personal brand, we want to offer a course. And if you are interested in that course, you can check out our website at tech-leaders.academy. I will also share the link in the chat directly. So right now the course isn't ready yet. We are setting everything up, but you can sign up for a waitlist there. So if you're interested, we would be very happy to receive your interest in the waitlist. So just check out the site I just linked in the chat and yeah, sign up.
Yeah, and finally, you will also be helping us to get the feedback if this is something that you want to focus like in more details. So if you want to have this kind of opportunity to have some such kind of workshop, so yeah, if you want to show us, we are collecting the data now from the waitlist. So put your name on the waitlist, and then we know if you are interested or not. Good. So that's the ending. 3 minutes over time. I think it's okay. Thank you very much, Tiankai, for all your
Thanks.
time, your insights. It was very helpful. It was very entertaining as well. We had so many questions and comments from the audience. Thanks also to that you were spending your time with us during lunch. Hope you had a good lunch
Yeah.
also. And yeah, see you next time. We have not yet any more events planned so far, but yeah, if we have that, you will be notified on the different channels that we are using. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.